Alrighty, let's get started properly. Kia ora koutou, my name's Sylvie Thrushmarsh. I'm MyHR's Chief Evangelist. And if you have been following us for a while, or if you watch our webinars or follow our content, you'll know that I've been on parental leave. So I came back yesterday. Yes, I've had a webinar on my second day back for my sins. Thank you to my marketing colleagues for scheduling that one. But it's a real joy to be back. It's been so much fun being in the Auckland office, and I'm particularly really looking forward to today's conversation with Katie, so we'll get onto that shortly. Now, as always, just a bit of webinar admin before we get started. So the session is being recorded, which means you will have access to a copy of it afterwards. If you need to take a call or duck away or need to leave early for whatever reason, you'll be able to access this later. Because the webinar is being recorded, of course, what that means is if you do ask any questions and we answer them, they will be captured as part of the recording. So you're welcome to ask them anonymously. Make sure you don't share your credit card information or anything in your question as it comes through. And if we do get any questions that come through that have data that might be better kept anonymous, I will just make sure I scrub those when I ask those questions of Katie. So the background for this webinar is it's been a really, really difficult, COVID was 2020, so let's say 5 years for businesses generally, but particularly for employees over the last couple of years with the cost of living skyrocketing, the kind of central bank making decisions about interest rates that have put a lot of pressure on mortgage holders in particular, and the cost of living just generally being really, really difficult to stay ahead of. So we've had lots and lots of inquiries over the last year or so from clients of ours wanting to know how to support their employees when they haven't had it in their budget to give, double-digit pay increases, or often anything pushing 5 or 6% has been really challenging to achieve. Financial advice, not in our wheelhouse, although some of us have many, many spreadsheets about managing our personal finances. So we did what we do best, which is look for someone who had the expertise to provide this kind of content and guidance for us, and Enable Me, our co-host for today. I'm joined by the wonderful Katie Wesney. So Katie is the head strategic coach at Enable Me. She's a chartered accountant. She's been doing this for a very, very long time. She presents more than I do, so I'm looking forward to learning from her today as well in terms of how to present and the skills she brings there. So we're really, really lucky to have her with us, and we're really grateful for her time doing this session with us. So Katie, welcome. Lovely to see you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to share my slides. So hopefully you can see the presentation. Is that okay there?
That's coming through clear. I'll hand over to you.
Awesome. Okay, fantastic. So I'm delighted to be here today. I absolutely acknowledge a really tough time for business and people in general. I don't think the economic gods have been kind to anyone. And in this session, we're going to be talking about what we can control, because there is a lot we can't control at the moment. So let's focus on how we help ourselves and our people. I'm more than happy to answer any questions, so pop them in the chat box. I've had some really thoughtful questions submitted prior, and we'll go through them at the end. No questions, silly question, you just ask me anything. So you might be thinking, who is she to tell me what I should do with my money? So thank you for the beautiful introduction. I appreciate it. So I am Katie. I've been at Enable Me for the last decade. I'm really, really passionate about this topic. I've got 3 kids. I always have something to say, which is why I'm a stuff columnist. So I make everyone mad with all my opinions on stuff. But I'm hugely passionate, and let's focus on today, as I said, the controllables and how we can help people into the future, and let's make sure we take away some really good tips from this session, because that's the thing that moves the dial. And as any good personal financial presentation, I start with a disclaimer in terms of what I say. So this presentation is provided for information purposes only. The content of this presentation is not intended as a substitute for regulated financial advice. We'll have a wee offer at the end for your people, for you, if you would like that individualized advice, but I'm going to be focusing on general principles, because I don't know your personal circumstances as of yet. So a wee agenda for today. we'll be talking about workplace financial well-being, how your mindset helps you gain momentum. A lot of people in this space just focus on strategy. In all reality, we know at Enable Me, the way we ensure we maximize our position and that we have financial success, 80% comes down to behavior, 20% comes down to strategy, and we're trying to marry the two for you. We'll talk about the 4 key levers to accelerate progress, actionable tips from KiwiSaver to building wealth, and then we'll round that out with Q&A. And again, just in terms of why this is important, poor financial well-being affects our people. It really does. It impacts sleep, stress. It's the biggest cause of relationship breakdown, and also work productivity. And hard but simple truth, every moment spent stressing about money impacts employees in and out of work, which affects your business. And what I know to be true is money's not good or bad, but when you feel like you're in control of your money, you feel like you're in control of your life. It just follows. And I think the fallacy for people in general is, and this is what I'm here to counter, is the way to fix this is to just earn more money, which is hard in this economic environment when you're an employer, for sure. But it's actually not true, because in all reality, the more that you earn, the more that you spend, and the more you disconnect from your finances. So again, what does make the difference? And to be clear, the lack of financial well-being is more common than not. And the stats, they just annoy me, if I'm honest with you. 55% of people worry about money daily or weekly. 80% feel stressed about money negatively impacting their work productivity. 45% could not access $5,000 within 1 week in case of emergency. And 34% don't have any form of insurance. 42% have credit card debt, so 31% have buy now, pay later. So if you are feeling stressed about your money, you are just not alone. And again, it's so what do we focus on to do better into the future? That is important in terms of what comes next. And when we think about the solution, let's not make it too hard, do you know? Because often people think about that like exponential next step, having to spend lots and lots of money. You actually don't have to, in all reality. Like any good solution, it's actually quite simple, if I'm honest. Financial well-being begins with having a budget. I like to call it a spending plan, actually, less jarring. At least 3 months of living costs in an emergency fund, short and long-term goals, and a plan to help you achieve them. And again, just to reiterate why it matters, too many employees live payday to payday, and ongoing financial stress affects more than their wallet. It really does. And to me, the benefits of employee well-being come down to greater peace of mind, actually, enjoyment in life. Employees feel more in control and independent, which results in a happier workplace and less reliance on things like pay rise, because I mean, everyone loves pay rises, but they are not the thing that gets people ahead. And I think our she'll be right attitude in New Zealand is actually getting in the way of our success. It's important that your wealth journey is planned for your individual circumstances, your goals, your desires for your life. There's no point planning your wealth journey around someone else's priorities. Everyone's different. It's just not motivating, exciting. And ultimately, you're here to live your best version of a life. And I think it's always useful to think about how does this relate to me? How does it relate to who I work with? So Doug is an amazing person. He came to us in his 30s with a floating financial position. So not going backwards, not going forwards, just cash in, cash out, just kind of treading water. He hasn't really ever focused on his finances to date. His goals were to boost his savings rate, to feel like he was working hard. He wanted to make sure he was making the financial progress he deserves. And in its heart, that's what we're here to help facilitate for our people. He wanted to make sure that he had cash set aside for a rainy day. I think that often you worry less when you have that cushion, but it also allows you to be braver in terms of strategy, because if it all goes horribly wrong, you've got a cushion to buffer you. That's really important. And for him, his North Star is he wants to buy his first home. So what we looked at for him is, okay, well, how do we optimize your cash flow? And lots of people are like, cool, cool. Can you just tell me how to invest? But in all reality, to invest, you need to have cash left over. So being purposeful around cash flow, having money left over at the end of every month, that is the engine room of anything that comes thereafter. Part of our toolkit is we have a MoneyFit tracker app, kind of like Zero, but for personal finance, whereby he could put in, well, what do I want to spend? What am I actually spending? And he could track it. And that's really important. It's like you do for your business KPIs. It's just what we're translating to personal finance. How do you know whether you're on track or not if you are not tracking? Love spreadsheets, but often it's about making sure that you had feedback loops immediately. Often people have amazing spreadsheets, color coded, but again, it's what do you do with that information and how do you know whether you're on track or not? And the immediacy of feedback is super important for lots of people. He's ticked off his first two goals, and I think celebrating success along the way is really important. We all have these big, audacious goals, like for Doug getting into a property, but you've got to take the wins along the way because, again, that helps you stay the course thereafter. And part of him ticking off those two goals was to, again, focus on having a goal in terms of cash flow left over, understanding where he was at in terms of tracking, and he's building towards his house deposit. So he's using his short-term progress as markers towards those kind of longer term goals. And I think really important for people to feel like they're moving forward, knowing that of course it's tough. I know that when you go to the supermarket, it feels like you're bleeding money. I've got 3 kids. I hear you. I'm the same. But again, it's about focusing on what we can control. And we can control putting in place upper limits around spending, making sure that we assess trade-offs within our spending, and then we focus on, well, what would we do with that money thereafter? And in terms of creating a really safe space for workplace well-being, and in all reality, your own well-being, if I'm honest, at MoneyFit, we believe everyone deserves to feel successful. And again, not about working any harder. It's about how do we make sure that our people utilize what they have. And let's just make sure everyone's sleeping at night. Really important. So in saying that, in our mind, there are 4 key pillars that should underpin your financial well-being into the future. So knowing what to do is really important, that financial literacy piece. But knowing and doing are two entirely different things. So it's great to know what to do. We want to distill that into executing on that because that's the real differentiator in terms of what comes next. And So again, knowing what to do, important in that education space, etc. Coming along today, tick. Having a plan in place in terms of individual goals, capability in terms of, well, what should you be aiming for from a cash flow perspective? And again, there's no judgment in terms of where people are at. Often we see people initially who are flying, and that's amazing. Our job is to help them fly higher. Some people are going backwards, so there's just not enough income to cover their outgoings initially. And there are almost kind of seasons in that plan. So for someone who's going backwards, and some people think that they are kind of treading water and not going backwards, even though they've got credit card debt that they can't repay in full. In my mind, if you can't repay your credit card debt in full, you are going backwards because you can't correct previous overspending. So, as part of that plan, understanding where you're at, understanding what you're aiming for from a goals perspective, putting numbers around that is really important. Exactly what you do for business, often lots of different realms as well. Fitness, we're just distilling this in terms of personal finance. And often as well, knowledge a plan. You've got to create better systems. I love that James Clear quote. You never rise to the level of your goals. You actually fall to the level of your systems. And part of doing better around your money is making sure that you create better systems. I was on 7 Sharp a few months ago talking about bank account structure. And I've had embarrassingly so many people stop me on the street about the segment about bank accounts. I was like, there's nothing else you'd like to talk about? They're like, no, no. We had lots of questions about bank accounts. And actually, that's an example of how to create better systems within your structure to make sure you do better. And so, again, having that robust bank account structure, often super useful. Money come into a central point, less regular spending, bills, day-to-day spending, you're automating, you're making sure you're anchoring it to a goal, and your people do better. Let's be pragmatic about the advice that they have access to, because remember, it's action that gets you ahead, not just the knowing. Really, really important. And part of that systemic piece is also making sure that everything is structured correctly. We work in an environment in New Zealand whereby we have super profitable banks, some of the most profitable in the world in terms of interest rates and fees. So as part of that system, making sure that any debt that we take on is structured really well to mitigate that interest is really important. Let's be deeply pragmatic about this. And often working with somebody external to yourself, you just do better. Human nature. You rise. Again, you always do better when you work with somebody else. You lift your game, you do what needs to be done, and you get there in the shortest amount of time. Of course you do. So all of those 4 pillars anchored to someone's situation ensures they do better. And this is about, again, controlling the controllables, not making this too hard, and understanding and creating financial well-being. It actually, in our mind, can be a simple step-by-step process. Let's demystify this, because in all reality, there are rules, you understand them, you execute on them, your people execute on them, and their trajectory shifts, and everyone does better from a productivity perspective. And the principles we have, to be clear, work for any goal, even getting rid of short-term debt, stepping onto the property ladder, growing wealth, starting a family, traveling, growing a business. This is unique to every person. Preparing for retirement full of choice. So again, these core pillars can be translated to ensure anyone achieves any financial goal, and that's really important. And there's never any judgment around the goal. Everyone is different. But again, part of my job is to zoom out with everyone in terms of their own holistic plan. And in all reality, do you know what I know to be true? Any plan is always anchored to two things. It's around security, not worrying about money, and just having a little bit more financial freedom. So just more choice around the work they do, how long they work for. Really important. So in terms of that knowledge piece, knowing what to do is really important. It's not just about financial knowledge. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's about knowledge about the way we think and act around money. Remember, I said at the beginning, financial success, 80% behavior, 20% strategy. So your money beliefs, your tendencies around money, whether you're a shopper or a saver or a plotter, that plays into how you craft a plan that you will stick to going forward. Everyone has different starting points. Ensuring you create a spending plan that is true to your position. And do you know what? Understanding your mindset is the difference between making your money work for you and letting it work against you. And so I can use myself an example. Ironically, I'm more of a shopper than a saver. Irony is not lost to me. But for me, I like the idea of saving. I'm just not necessarily naturally very good at it. For me, I need to ensure as part of my plan that I have goals that are sexy enough and motivating enough for me to try harder. And I love to see about visibility around progress. So that is what I know for myself. Whereas my husband is more of a saver. So he more derives emotional satisfaction from saving, but his propensity is to hoard cash. He's not necessarily good at growing it in terms of strategy. So again, it's understanding, well, how do you operate around money and what do you focus on and true to your values to ensure you make the progress that you deserve. And that stat is interesting as well, just in terms of I can't get back. Can I get back to it? 43% of New Zealanders consider themselves to be financially literate. We can do better. We can do better. And knowledge is key in terms of what is important to you, because established beliefs can hold us back. They really can. Lots of people are uncomfortable to talk around money. So again, I think focusing on this is really important. Again, money's not good or bad, but when you focus on it, you do better. I think also that fallacy, and it's what you can sometimes glean from the media, like it's quite negative. I try not to be in my column, but it's so negative, right? And you're like, oh, what's the point of even trying? And there is always a point in trying, but it's understand what do you focus on first to move the dial for you and your family. And it's focusing on what you control, because you can't control interest rate, but you can control your strategy. So super important. And again, I think when that overwhelm comes, it actually, what it translates to is not taking action. And to be honest, what I know to be true, and remember, I've been doing this for the last decade, the biggest cost to most people in terms of what they do is they just don't do anything. But that is a choice, and generally it comes with the biggest opportunity cost. They just keep doing what they're doing, hoping for the best. And again, just that plan is so critical. There's that knowledge, but you've got to have a plan. You've got to have clearly defined goals, and you've got to track progress exactly like you do in business, as I said, in fitness, other realms. We're just translating that to personal finance. And a spending plan, see, not a budget, spending plan, helps you to feel in control and can reduce your financial stress. 56% of us do not feel financially prepared for retirement. I do not accept that for us and our people. I do not. But not accepting that, what do we do about it? Really, really important. And in my mind, and I'm emphasizing this a lot, but that cash engine is it flows into everything you do thereafter. And it really does help you focus and ensure your money makes a difference. And everyone has different starting points. Everyone wants to get to somewhere different. Everyone has a different time frame. That dictates your strategy more than anything. And again, I cannot emphasize enough in terms of taking control, ensuring that you have really good systems in place, track your spending, that cash flow management piece in terms of bank accounts. It all matters. This isn't whiffly, waffly concepts. These are concrete actions that you and your people can put in place that ensure you do better. It's kind of like putting friction in your system that prevents things you don't want to, like using credit cards. Don't use them. You will do better if you don't. And ensuring that it's easier to make the better decision. So automate that savings goal as soon as you get paid, and then you work with what's left over. You are more likely to succeed. And again, you can have mini systems in place as well. One of the biggest areas of fritter or unintentional spending is around foodie spend. So even those little things like you think in itself don't move the dial, but it's that compounding effect of all of these little actions. So even meal planning means that you don't top up as much at the supermarket. Because again, I don't know if you're anything like me, and I'm probably not a good example, but if I go to the supermarket for bananas and buns for the kids' lunches, somehow I walk out, I do not know why, with buns, bananas, something else was on special, and I've spent a lot of money. So for me, I've got to prevent myself to go to the supermarket, and I do better. Automatic payments, not to miss bills, really important. And avoiding those financial triggers, like just unsubscribe from all of those sale emails whereby you are spending money to save money. Generally, you're not. And again, just at a very simplistic level, a budget tracks what you earn and what you spend. It's creating that awareness. You can see patterns. It's that consistency of action that counts, and that feeling like you're moving forward. For lots of people who come to see me initially, they're like, Katie, I feel like I'm just a hamster in a wheel. I'm pedaling super fast, but I'm not sure if I'm getting ahead at the pace that I should. And again, just re-emphasizing that accountability piece is really important. And we've tried to embed that within our Money Fit app as well. Working with an accountability partner, super important. And that could be a trusted friend, your family. It could be a qualified financial advisor like myself, a coach. Again, know thyself in terms of what would work best. What I do know to be true is for most people, they don't want to be accountable to their partner around money. That just creates a friction. No one wants to be told what to do, essentially. So generally, if it's external to your partner, if you've got joint finances, that tends to decrease friction in relationships. And again, these stats, I get more, I feel like I get madder as this presentation goes on. But again, just re-emphasizing, 42% of New Zealanders have credit card debt. We pay such a lot in interest charges. It's like 19%. No wonder we have profitable banks. So again, in terms of that, not only accountability, I think that speaks to systems. You will do better if you don't have a credit card. It's a behavioral economics principle that people spend more when they have credit cards. Don't use them. You'll do better. And buy now, pay later sounds great, but is that what you want for your kids? Because they're watching everything you do, and by its very nature, it's kind of intimating that you don't have the money for the purchase of what you want immediately. So again, save before you spend. These are principles that we learnt at school, it's great to have this knowledge. Let's just make sure that we're executing on a plan that's true to our values and try and make it easier for yourself. Um, and I know that we're a nation of DIYers and we want to have independence in our choices and actions. But to be honest, there shouldn't be any shame in reaching out to an expert, especially when it comes to helping you reach your ultimate financial potential. And I think everyone's situation is one of a kind and should be treated like it. Um, Again, it's where do you invest time and effort to ensure that you bank results? Really important. And again, I think automating that budget, tracking your spending, it's like tracking calories in a fitness app. There's so many synergies between financial fitness and fitness in itself. It automates the data so you don't have to and lets you focus on making progress instead. Again, we're directing our effort where we're going to get bang for our buck. So in terms of actionable tips, let's just jog through. I know I've given you some tips, but again, I want to ensure that you've given up your time. I need to ensure that we deliver value. So in terms of KiwiSaver, it is a piece of the puzzle. It is not the be all and end all, but it is very important. Please, 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 I beg of you, ensure that your people, but also you, are optimizing your KiwiSaver. We had a really good question about that, but we'll go through that at the end. Be active in your choice of KiwiSaver provider and fund choice. Please consider, what do you plan to use it for? Is it a first home? Is it retirement? What is your time frame? That time frame piece really does dictate the fund that you should be in. And again, there's general rules around that. As a financial advisor, this is not individuals financially advised, but if you're not going to access something for 10 years or more, strongly advised, for most it should be in growth. Make sure everything works as hard as possible for you. But again, calling out 420,000 of us are self-employed in New Zealand. Only 44% of these were contributing KiwiSaver members in 2024 and 2025. So again, please optimize your KiwiSaver. If you're not in KiwiSaver because you own a business, you got to be doing something else. And you selling that business can't be the solving everything. You got to make sure that your assets work as hard as possible for you. That mortgage piece, absolutely critical. And again, in terms of sucky stats, average New Zealander buys their first home at 35 and it takes them 30 years to pay off their mortgage. You borrow 500,000 and you pay it off over 30 years, you repay 3 times what you borrowed back to the bank. It is not year 15 that you start paying back more principal than you do interest. If you do what the bank wants you to, for the first 23 years of that mortgage, you're paying back more interest than you are principal with every repayment. So it is important in terms of long-term well-being that you get yourself mortgage free. I cannot emphasize that enough. You need to increase the cadence at which you pay off your mortgage. And again, doing that really strategically helps. For a lot of my clients, they pay, again, this is not individualized advice, but for lots of my clients, they pay the least amount on the fixed term and then they embed a savings or debt reduction goal within a revolving credit that helps facilitate that. But just to be clear, I know it's hard, but interest rates are coming down, but everyone focuses on interest rates. And of course, I want you to pay the least amount in interest, but what actually helps you get ahead is ensuring you pay the darn thing off. And again, hugely pragmatic. That is the lever that you pull to get yourself ahead. You pay less interest, and then you're creating naturally equity that you could tap into to buy potentially an investment property to really move the dial for you and your family. And it just unlocks other things in terms of what comes next around growing wealth and ensuring that you can retire with choice. And to reiterate, the most important fundamentals to get right are earn more than you spend, get your KiwiSaver working hard for you. There are ways to prepare for retirement that start in your 20s. The earlier you start improving your money habits and getting sorted, the better life you will have and the more choice. And again, that building wealth piece is important in terms of maximizing position for you and your people. Why growing wealth is greater well-being? Well, I think it's pretty obvious, but life is expensive. We know that. That is something that you can't control. Growing wealth makes everything easier. And again, just in terms of distilling numbers around this, um, if you have lifestyle cost of 40,000 at retirement, times that by 25 years, presuming you retire at 65 and you've got to get to 90, that's 25 years, you need $1 million. At the moment, super covers some of that. So translated over 25 years, that's 675,000, but there is still a gap. In this example, it's 325,000. And I know that feels like a big, scary number, but for me, I'm like, okay, game on. How do we backfill a strategy that's going to ensure that you bridge that gap? And just to reiterate, KiwiSaver is important. It's just not the be all and end all. Average KiwiSaver balance for 56 to 60-year-olds is like 65 grand. So generally speaking, we need to be doing something else. And again, lots of different options. It's understanding what is the right option for you. And that depends on goals and timelines. And again, that regardless of what that number looks like for you, the important aspect is to know that growing wealth just creates options, and options for what you do during retirement, where and how you live, helping your kids financially. And often people will ask us in the workplace, but also the clients I see face to face, well, it's hard for us, it's going to be harder for our kids. What should we be doing to help them? And I always say, well, sort yourself out. That gives you more ability to help them. But more importantly, you teach them the rules of the game and they do what you do. So really important to make sure that you sort your own self out. And I think so important is to give options for the level or kind of care you receive in retirement. I've seen that firsthand. Both of my parents are very poorly and in care, and it costs a lot of money. So again, really important in terms of options. And I often see people, and part of my role when I work with people is to have a longer line of sight than they do. And I'm always really ambitious for my clients. And often, again, it's about making sure that you distill where things are going a bit wonky at the moment to make sure that they feel like they can move forward in a really tangible amount. And it's about unpacking some of those big, audacious goals, which sometimes can be, I just don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. So we unpack that in terms of capability, structure. For some people, their goal is around, well, I just like to get mortgage free, but their mortgage is like 800,000 and they're like, oh, well, that feels too hard. And like life, it's often about saying, well, what's the next right thing and the next right thing and the next right thing? And then again, your whole trajectory shifts. And the best approach for you and your people, it depends on a whole lot of factors, but there are general principles that we've talked about that serve everyone. But as you craft your own plan and they craft theirs, it's about time frame, it's about understanding goals, capacity for risk, cash flow requirements, and that again is really critical. Flexibility, you can never have a plan that's just set in stone. Otherwise, it becomes irrelevant to you. As you said, COVID, cost of living crisis, for lots of people, there is uncertainty in terms of jobs, etc. That's okay. It's what can we do today with the knowns today? Ability to access mortgage lending, access to equity, and that wealth goal, super important. And often that is where working with someone external to yourselves really, really, it does help. And again, don't want to go full political with the answer. It really does depend on the individual. And again, for lots of people, they're pinning their hopes on winning lotto or some other mythical thing. And again, it's just not going to happen. And there's things that we are leaving on the table. We're bleeding money in terms of interest. We are working incredibly hard, but that very rarely translates to the financial progress that we deserve. So that's what we focus on in terms of action thereafter. And we've got a wee workplace wellbeing offer for you and your people. If you're interested in running a financial wellbeing session for you and your family as an add-on, we'd love to partner with you. These sessions are a great way to support your clients. It's similar to what you were asking me in terms of questions. But again, this is about giving practical tools and insights around money, resilience, and financial confidence, because that confidence piece is really important, because you need that confidence to act. And if you need coaching for your own well-being, like, honestly, book a financial consultation with one of our Enable Me coaches. So in terms of a wee offer following this webinar, we've got a wee QR code. Scan that. For workplace leaders, get in touch if you're interested in providing some workplace wellbeing for your people. Also, we're running a discounted financial consultation on the back of this webinar. We'd love to offer that to you. It's a 90-minute session with an Enable Me coach like myself. We're up and down the country for just $100. It's usually $400. Jump on the financial scales. Where are you at now? Where do you want to be? Are you on track, or could you be better? And we do a broad plan around that. So that offer is available if you book before Monday, the 27th of October. So just scan that QR code. So I'd like to wrap up with our questions. Answer anything. I will stop sharing now. Great. Hit me.
Fabulous.
Hit me with your questions.
Thank you, Katie. It's always such a joy to hear from someone who has the expertise to back up their passion for a subject.
Yep.
And it's really clear to me that this is really important to you for a number of reasons. So again, I really appreciate your time.
More than
Before we jump
welcome.
into questions, just to really quickly recap, if this session has felt like it could be helpful for you and your whānau, or for you and your personal situation, get in touch with Katie to take advantage of that consultation offer. And if you work with people for whom you think this would be useful or necessary, we've had quite a few questions come through about supporting teams, get in touch with Katie and her team, and they can look at running a session that's more tailored to you and your business's circumstances.
Yep, great, awesome.
So thank you to the team who sent through, to the people who sent through questions before the webinar. There's always a bit to talk about when it comes to talking about finances. So first question comes through from Sonia. Sonia, thank you for submitting this if you're on the call. Sonia would like to know, how can we safely give advice to employees? We have a lot of young people who work for us on how and why to do KiwiSaver and how to research their provider. And I would add to that, Katie, is it the place of employers to give financial advice? Because in our world, small businesses have a really deep sense of care and a really deep sense of a duty of responsibility for your employees. Is it our place to be giving this guidance when we can see that they're struggling or that they're making financial missteps?
Yeah, it's tricky, hey. And I've been a small business owner, and sheesh, it's a juggle. I always laugh when people come along and they're like, one of my goals is to be self-employed because I just want an easier life. I'm like, not sure if that is an easier life, my friend. But I love the question, Sonia. And I think that in terms of duty of care, I would strongly advise that it's about that we're educating, we're not advising. And I think there's a really critical difference. And I think it also keeps you out of regulatory hot water. And I'd encourage you to bring in a qualified financial advisor or use government resources like sorted.org.nz to run workshops on how KiwiSaver works, the power of compounding interest. I'm a Swiftie, and I just wrote an article for stuff on the power of compound interest and what Taylor can teach us about that. So Google that. And why provider choice matters, because fees do eat into returns, and that compounds over decades. So again, just re-emphasizing, it's teaching them how to do the research and point them to comparison tools like the sorted KiwiSaver fund. So that's not anyone kind of hocking their fund, etc. That's kind of neutral. explain what to look for: fees, returns, risk profile. For some people, that ethical piece is really important, so they make informed decisions. You're not telling them what to do. That's the line that keeps HR safe and employees actually helped. I think that's really important. So yeah, great question. So it's education, not advice.
Katrina asks, what advice can we give or try to give employees who we see living paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah, and again, so common. You saw the stats, make me angry. And again, I think there's that fallacy that it's the people more on minimum wage. It's not. For a lot of people, they're living paycheck to paycheck. So I think it's that knowledge piece that you start with in terms of that financial literacy. And I always think that that kindness piece, most people are not reckless. They're just overwhelmed, if I can be frank, and they just don't know where to begin. And again, just encourage you to bring in qualified financial advisors for workshops on practical basics, budgeting that works, automatic savings, tracking spending, with great apps like the one we have, MoneyFit, because even $20 a week saving, it builds a habit. And it's often, Katrina, about breaking those reactive spending cycles. And again, I'm always so careful. The goal is never, and I know this isn't the intention of the question, it's quite the opposite, but we just have to be really careful that there's no shame around it. It's actually more common than not. And to give them tools to normalize asking for help. We are so bad in New Zealand at asking for help. We DIY it, but the consequence of DIYing is that we just limp along, not doing what we should, and that's exhausting and hard. And it just means that we work harder and longer than we should. And I think it's about showing that small, consistent actions compound into real change over time. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think that's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you,
Yeah,
Katie.
no, all good.
May asks, for budget setting, what types of questions or what action can I take within my organization to make sure there is money in our budget to be able to support our employees with these kinds of initiative? And
Such
May,
a
I
good
had to do a bit of
question.
interpreting of your question. So if I've got that wrong, please let me know in the Q&A. But what can we do to make sure that there is money in our organization's budgets to support our teams with these kinds of activities?
Yeah, such a good question, particularly in this economic environment where money is short. No one is splashing the cash. I am very aware of that because no one has money to splash. Understand that. And I think my answer would be that it's really easy to look at this type of thing as a cost, but to be honest, often it's a massive productivity saving. An example I can give, one large New Zealand employer saw increased absenteeism at the end of the month as people did not have money to pay for food, so they started to pay for breakfast. Um, it's the give a man a fish or teach them to fish. When you support your people to make better decisions, they are better equipped to turn up and do their role and focus on that. And quite often you can't give them a 7% pay rise, but in education, you can help your team find ways to be better with what they have. So again, it's translating the cost to that productivity saving in terms of cost benefit. And again, very pragmatic. There needs to be a benefit for the business as well. So that's the framing in terms of how you get that across the line, in my mind.
Julie asks, what applications do you recommend for tracking our spending?
Yeah, so we have our own MoneyFit app, amazing. So I'm biased, so I know that. But there's lots of different other tracking apps. Banks, you can often track your spending through a bank app, for example. So you can just Google that. The trick around tracking, though, always is if you just track, for most people without a goal, it just generally shows you that you're quite good at spending money. So you're just like, oh, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes. What does work is saying, well, this is what I want to do. What am I actually doing? And anchor it to a goal. So that's the preface on whatever you use. So we make sure we have an anchor point in terms of intention, a goal, and that's what you are looking at in terms of tracking, and then you do better. So biased, I'm saying Money Fit, there's lots of different ones. Just Google it, and also there's the bank as well.
Nice one. And as a personal recommend, I'm not paid by these people, but my household uses Pocketsmith as an app. I'm going to have a look into MoneyFit, of course, and see what your
Yeah,
functionality is.
yeah,
But Pocketsmith we've found really useful as another name for people to look into.
yeah, great. Yep, awesome. Yeah, we did use
And
Pocketsmith, and then we designed MoneyFit. So yeah.
fabulous. I'm sure it will be a big improvement on their platform.
Mhm.
We've got an anonymous question, quite timely,
Okay.
asking, can you please talk about privacy in these apps?
Yeah, that's really important. And if they're not private, then you're in breach of the Privacy Act. And so you can't do that. We can't do that. And we take that really seriously. And also remember, often, it's such a good question, that privacy piece, like lots of the tracking apps, they're I'm not very technical, so this is layperson's. They're kind of stripping transactions from like bank accounts, can't do anything, but it's kind of, and the bank would not let you do that without the highest degree of that privacy and controls. So it's such a good question. I love that you ask it, but there are lots of protocols in terms of Privacy Act. We have lots of codes that we must adhere to. It's really important that New Zealanders are protected, and everyone takes that really seriously, because quite frankly, if we didn't, no one's in business anymore, and we know that.
And a really good call out too to the value of using licensed registered financial advisors, because
Oh,
you are
so
bound by
true.
these laws, yeah, of
Oh,
this
and
registration.
again, we just take it so seriously. For us, we have the highest duty of care to protect our people. And again, if we're not in business, and we've been around for a very long time. We started in the GFC. So yeah, we know that. Yeah, and that is really, really, that is our highest value, to protect people. Mm.
Julia has a question about the offer that you've put out for individuals.
Yeah,
Can we offer the discounted session to our employees, as in we would pay the cost of our employees taking up that 90-minute session with your team?
why not? I'm the head coach. I'll just say so. They can just say, Katie said, and I'll make it so. Absolutely, absolutely fine. Yeah, I do think there's a real need out there at the moment for this. It's just, yeah, the stats are crap. Sorry, I'm not supposed to. Yep, the stats are just so subpar, and it's such a negative environment to work within. Like, I think the greatest disservice we often do as New Zealanders is accidentally, by our lens and focus on what's going wrong, we take away hope from people. And this is saying, well, how do we give hope back? And how you give hope back is you say, well, here's some really good actions you can take that will be quick wins. And then you do those quick wins, and then you're like, momentum is changing. And that's just so important. And I think also knowing that, I always start with the preface when I see somebody. Like, some people slink in and they're like, yeah, not really my bag. Or even if they're really good at it, it's like, I actually don't care what's happened. I really don't, because you can't change what's happened. It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying, well, how do I get excited about what comes next? And that is what we focus on thereafter.
Fabulous. Thank you, Katie.
Mm.
Love a good executive decision made in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, we have a question here in terms of the cost of using MoneyFit, and or the difference between using MoneyFit and Excel. Can you tell us a little bit about how MoneyFit works?
Yeah, so with my non-technical layman's, I use it. Obviously, I think people sniff hypocrisy. I use it, and I'm also a chartered accountant, so I'm a mean spreadsheet person. I can color code it. I'm pretty amazing. Difference between, in my mind, with my layperson's hat, not being technical, is I can write a mean budget, I can color code it, but having a spreadsheet means nothing to me in terms of sticking to it, and it's in sticking to the budget and knowing where I'm at from a decision-making perspective is the thing that moves the dial, versus having a app, for example, that speaks to your bank transactions, and you've got real-time information. So I know I can go into my phone, into my app, and I know exactly where I am in terms of my goal for the year. I also know where I sit within my budgets. So again, in real time, I can be like, Katie, don't buy that top. You're over budget. Or Katie, you go out for dinner because you've been working hard, you're under budget, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. That's the real-time information you get when you are tracking in real time with an app versus a spreadsheet that is quite laborious, I must admit, if you have to update it in terms of actuals. And your time is money. And I think if it's more automated, you can focus on the things that will really move the dial, which is the actions versus the laborious entering of the spreadsheet. Whilst great, again, it's that behavioural piece, sticking to the budget, knowing where you're at and making better decisions. That's the differentiator.
Nice one. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah,
Look,
and in summary, I can't answer anything in a short way. It has appeared. I'm so sorry about that.
Totally fine. Thank you. And look, we've had quite a few questions come through about employers providing access to that discounted session to their employees, and quite a few questions about accessing the MoneyFit app. So what I think we might do, just in the interest of time, is
Yes.
when we send out our post-webinar comms, we'll have some information about getting in touch with you if you as an individual want to access support, getting in touch with your team if you want to offer a session like this to your employees, and also
Great
in terms
idea.
of accessing the MoneyFit app, and then the circumstances in terms around accessing that discounted offer for a consultation. We'll make it clear who can do that and where you need to get in touch and what the fees are involved for all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
and I will say, and again, I'm an honourable person. I will honour what I have said in this call, and I will personally suffer the consequences. So all good. In terms of what we've said, we'll reiterate that in the offer. We're really passionate about helping people, and we'd love to help as many people as we can.
Fabulous. Thank you, Katie.
Awesome.
Well, look, we'll leave it there. We'll wrap up a couple of minutes early. Thank you so much for joining us and for bringing your knowledge and your context and
More than welcome.
your advice to this session. It's been I've really enjoyed it, and I always learn something from these pieces here. Just a quick reminder again, there'll be an email that comes out to everyone who's registered to attend this webinar in the next couple of days with a link to the recording, details on how to get in touch with Katie and her team, access those offers, and access the app as well. If you do have any questions, I'm sure Katie won't mind you dropping her an email to get in touch. Her contact details, again, will be a part of that follow-up email. But for now, I hope this has been useful. We've had, again, a rush of questions come through. So clearly there's a lot of interest, which I think speaks to the timeliness and the really deep emotional impact getting our money right or getting it wrong can have on us. So thank you everyone for sending your questions through. Again, Katie, thank you. And I look forward to working with you again in the future. This has been great.
It's been amazing, and welcome back to the workforce. Enjoy all those breaks. Amazing. So good. Thank you so much. Take care. All the best, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.